the blood is pumping and diverting it right to itself through coronary arteries. And another fact in this Yale University book is that this muscle right here called the heart, if you were to take a tennis ball and squeeze it as hard as you could, everybody just kind of squeeze as hard as you can with your fist. That's how much pressure your heart is putting or producing every time it beats. And it's twice as much energy, or not energy, but twice as much power in that heart as what your muscles in your thigh require. So this thing requires a lot of blood flow, and it's going to work for a lifetime. 3 billion beats. And you guys are aware of the anatomy of the heart, but I'm going to review it real quickly for you. And as you look at this, does it look like a typical illustration of the heart to you? I see a couple of heads nodding. Well, you're going to find when you dissect this heart today, which is a swine heart, it's not human, of course, but it's very similar to a human heart, that this illustration is nowhere near accurate. Why am I saying that? Well, look at this left ventricle. What does the left ventricle do? It pumps blood through 60,000 miles of vessel. It has to be big. And as you cut this heart open today, you're going to find out that this thing we call the left ventricle is not a big gaping space. It's potential space. In fact, the muscles on the heart you're going to dissect today are pretty closed up. It's just a little hole there. Now, every time that the blood is pumped in there, that hole expands into a big ventricle. That's called the Frank Starling effect. That muscle, which is pretty closed up, called left ventricle, when you fill it up with about 70 cc's of blood, it does this. It stretches. And the more blood you put in there, the more it stretches. And the more it stretches, the stronger it becomes because it's elastic. And then when it's time for it to beat, it goes, and it pushes it back out. And it requires that. Another thing you're going to notice, I'm going to point out some parts. You might be able to read them from where you are. But what's this right here in the middle of the heart? Okay, that's the septum. What is the septum? I heard a wall. What is the septum? It does separate the chambers, but you're going to find today, I think you will be illuminated a little bit as to what the septum actually is. It's actually just part of the left ventricle. This right ventricle over here is just kind of added on. It's not nearly as thick. It doesn't need to be, because where's it pumping blood? Pumping to the lungs. And in a healthy individual, there's such little pressure in the pulmonary circulation that the right ventricle just kind of goes like this. Now the left ventricle is over there doing this. The right ventricle going. It's not under pressure, so it doesn't need as much meat. You're going to see a little bit larger space right here. If you compare the volumes of the two, just by looking at them, you'd say, well, the right ventricle is larger. But the left ventricle is nothing but muscle. Another thing you're going to notice, what is this right up here? It's labeled pretty well. That right atrium is bigger than either one of those ventricles in this picture. Now, I'm not making fun of Adam. I love Adam illustrations. I think they have some of the best series of medical illustrations there are. But in this particular illustration, it's not accurate. The right ventricle, the right atrium is not large at all. In fact, you're going to see on the top of the heart, it's just kind of sitting up there. If the ventricle is this big, the atrium is kind of like this big. It is under no pressure. And you're going to cut it open at one point and find out it's paper thin. Now that's pretty cool information, because have you ever seen a right atrial myocardial infarction? It doesn't happen because it's under no pressure. Yes, this is muscle, but this muscle does not have to do any work. In fact, the blood that enters the right atrium is trickling down from the superior vena cava. Under no pressure, it's just flowing down. Gravity is what brings it from the head and shoulders and neck down into this atrium. And it starts to fill up. And then other blood is being pumped up from the feet, from the legs, from the abdominal cavity, kind of pumping up like this. Now it's entering this chamber right here, and it's just kind of filling it up. And at the same time, y'all, this valve is always kept open. And the blood is now trickling down and filling up the ventricle at the same time. This ventricle, whenever the atrium is filling up, the ventricle is filling up. When it comes time for a heartbeat to take place, and and the electrical activity comes down into the ventricles, and they finally depolarize and start to contract, this valve snaps shut. Why does that valve snap shut? Keep the blood from going back up into the right atrium. The first heart sound you hear is this valve going snap. So the ventricles squeeze, this valve snaps, the blood goes out to the lungs, and then it comes back into the left atrium, trickles down into the left ventricle. When this ventricle contracts, this valve, called the mitral valve, snaps shut, and the blood goes out through the aorta. So if you will, the atria go like this. They don't have to do much work. Ventricles go. Right atrium goes like, ventricle goes like this, left ventricle goes like this. The average heart pumps out, the average left ventricle pumps out about 60 to 70 cc's of blood every time it beats. And it beats 100,000 times a day. You can do the math. That's a lot of blood your heart's pumping during a day. All right. Now, another thing you're going to notice as you start cutting through these hearts is they look like a piece of good red meat. Now, the hearts that Todd has for you today are pig hearts, and they've been in the freezer, and they've been thrown out for a few days. They're going to look a lot like a piece of meat. It's kind of been in your freezer a little longer. Now, if you want a good grilled meat, you go to the Harris Teeter buy it today and throw it on the grill tonight, don't you? If you leave it in the refrigerator for a few days, it kind of starts to age a little bit. It might not be as juicy red looking as it was, but you still eat it. This heart, as you cut into it, you're going to realize it's like the piece of meat you throw in the grill. It looks good. And as you cut through it, it feels nice and soft. But then you start hearing this, because you're actually now starting to cut little cords here called tendons. What is it that connects a muscle to a bone? Tendon. And right here, we're connecting muscle to a valve. And one of the things that's going to really stick out to you today as you cut open this ventricle is the size of these papillary muscles. They're not really as small as you see here. They're huge. They're very, very strong fibers. You can feel them to the ventricle. We'll do that. And their job is to keep these valves pulled open tight all the time. And then at the last minute, when the ventricle contracts, they snap shut, and then as soon as the contraction's finished, they pull open again. These papillary muscles pull hard all the time against those valves to keep them open. And you're going to see these chordae tendineae, these little cords or tendons that keep the valves open. Another thing we're going to try to show you as you cut into this are the different the leafy valves, like the aortic valve and the pulmonic valve. The aortic valve is going to be pretty easy to find. As we cut a little higher into this thing also, you're going to realize that the aorta itself is a very tough piece of artery, about the size of a garden hose. On the pig, a little bit larger. It's thick. And you will compare that to the vena cava that we talked about earlier, lying right next to it, which doesn't look blue in reality. And here, these both look the same. They look white. But this one's pretty thin. Why is this one thin compared to the aortic, which is very thick? Aorta is under great pressure, exactly. In fact, where's the greatest pressure in your entire circulatory system? Well, right here, really. And then the next place, of course, is right up here in the aorta. What's the first branch off of the aorta? What artery branches off the aorta first? Exactly, the coronary arteries. Now, I've got another picture here, and then we'll get into the cutting. This one right here. Which shows you the coronary arteries. Now, this one is really, the artist has really gone through a lot of difficulty to show us the fatty deposits around the arteries and veins of the myocardium. And in fact, you can actually see that on this drawing here, can't you? Not drawing, this photograph. Todd and I made this about 2 weeks ago. There's a lot of fat around most of the arteries. Now, this would be your right coronary artery. It extends down to the bottom of the left ventricle, believe it or not, and part of the right ventricle. It wraps around the back to get the posterior heart. This one right here, which actually in this particular case looks smaller, is the left anterior descending artery. In this particular pig, it looks like this part of the heart required more blood flow than actually the anterior part of the left ventricle. Oh well, that's the way it is. You're going to see though, why? Because the left ventricle actually, when we dissect right up into here, you'll realize that we're still looking at the left ventricle right here. The pig is a big fat animal. His blood has to work, heart has to work all the time to pump blood out to this massive body. It probably weighs, how much does a pig weigh? 600 pounds? He has left ventricular hypertrophy. And so in this case, the right coronary artery appears to be larger than the left coronary artery. On a human being, this artery right here is the one that you implicate with most major MIs. This is called the widowmaker. Okay? Questions?